Welcome to a special August meeting of HPNC, Haiku Poets in Northern California. Now let me introduce you to Fay Aoyagi. She started writing haiku in English in 1995. In 2000, she joined 10E, led by Dr. Arima, and began writing in Japanese too. She published 3 haiku collections, Chrysanthemum Love, In Borrowed Shoes, and Just Beyond the Reach of My Chopsticks, all from Blue Willow Books. Her work has been published in various haiku magazines and anthologies. She was a former president of the Haiku Society of America and also of HPNC, and is currently associate editor of Heron's Nest. Also, she's a doujin of 2 Japanese haiku groups, Pin-ni and Akai, answering a request from Gary Gain and Paul Miller at a roundtable pizza after an HPNC meeting. She started a daily haiku translation of modern Japanese haiku. You can read nearly 5,000 haiku on her blog or Facebook. She's also been our longtime coordinator of the Renge contest for HPNC. And here's Fay. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. So I'm going to share the screen. Share and slideshow from the beginning. Okay. All right. So thank you, Gary. And today's title of my speech is a haiku by modern day Japanese poets. And most of haiku I will share today were the same ones I used at my presentation in June for From Institute, which David Watts taught haiku to his students. But I forgot almost what I talked then. So I hope this presentation sounds fresh for the ones who attended the presentation in June as well. And these are important elements for Japanese haiku poets. First one is a kigo. Of course, there are some haiku without kigo, season words, but kigo is still very important for many Japanese haiku poets. Saijiki, season word almanac, is a must-have item for the poets, and it has the absolute power. If Saijiki says watermelon is an autumn kigo, the people will not question it. And actually, Saijiki, Japanese Saijiki, is based on traditional lunar calendar. So haiku autumn starts around August 8th, our time. And shike, mentor-student lineage, and kesha, haiku group, are also important. There are hundreds or maybe close to 1,000 of haiku groups in Japan. It is said, according to one of the websites, haiku population in Japan is 6 million to 7 million. Of course, not everyone is serious to join haiku group, but joining haiku group is one of the way you can study haiku. And this kesha haiku group publishes monthly or maybe sometimes bi-monthly membership magazines and conducts kukai. Kukai, as you may know, is haiku writing study meeting. And this is the sample of shike, mentor students lineage. Dr. Arima here was my teacher, and Dr. Arima's teacher was Seison Yamaguchi. And Seison Yamaguchi's teacher was Kyoshi Takahama. And Kyoshi Takahama's teacher was Shiki Masaoka. So technical speaking, I can be a grand student of Shiki, but I'm not big fan of Shiki, so I don't feel like it. So now I'm going to switch gear and show some sample haiku by poets after Shiki. First one is Kyoshi Takahama. 初チョーク、何色と問う、一答う、Takahama Kyoshi. First butterfly comes. I ask what color. She answers yellow. Kyoshi Takahama. Kyoshi was a very important haiku student of Shiki, and he became a leader of Hototogisu Kuku haiku group after Shiki's death. And he had dominated Japanese haiku scene for a very long time. And actually, Takahama family, the Takahamas are kind of like a royal family of haiku in Japan. And leaders of Hototogisu all have a bloodline to Kyoshi. For example, like after Kyoshi passed away, Kyoshi's son became a leader, and son died, son's daughter became a leader. And when son's daughter died, daughter's son became a leader, things like that. 旅継ぐや、野良ともなれず、教師妻。Mending tabi socks, I cannot be Nora, as I'm the teacher's wife. 久女すぎた。Women's position in society before World War II was very low. Many believed Hisajo was a very talented haiku poet, but her life as a haiku poet was not very easy. She died at the psychiatric hospital. 道のくの鮭は醜し、あも道のく、山口清村。In the deep north, salmon are ugly. Me too, from the deep north. Seison Yamaguchi. Oh, Stu, you don't have to write down old haiku. I can send you a slide so you can see it. And Seison Yamaguchi was a student of Kyoshi, and he started his own haiku group called Natsukusa, Summer Grass. And Seison was a teacher of Dr. Arima, who started his own haiku group. There are many leader class poets from Natsukusa, like, for example, like Momoko Kuroda, Takuyo Obara, Kafu Saito, Kenji Fukami, etc., etc. And another Yamaguchi, Seishi Yamaguchi. アジサイの落下は塔の破片なり。山口清史。Fallen hydrangea. It is a piece of ceramics. Seishi Yamaguchi. Seishi Yamaguchi was one of 4S of Hototogisu haiku group. And 4S means like four very good students of Kyoshi. Their first name started S in alphabets, like Seishi Yamaguchi, Shuoshi Mizuhara, Soju Takano, and Seiha Amano. And in 1948, he started his own haiku group called Tendon, Skywolf, and led a haiku movement in the 20th century. And actually, Patricia Donegan learned haiku from Seishi in Japan when she was in Japan. 鉛筆で書く音静か、チューリップ、星野達子。The quiet sound of a pencil writing, tulips, Tatsuko Hoshino. Tatsuko Hoshino was the second daughter of Kyoshi. She was called 4T of Hototogisu haiku group. And those 4 women whose first name starting with a T, like Tatsuko Hoshino, Teijo Nakamura, Takako Hashimoto, and Takajo Mitsuhashi. And Tatsuko started her own haiku group called Tamamo Duckweed in 1930. She was the first female haiku reader in history. And like Hototogisu, the leader of Tamamo stays in Tatsuko's family. Like Tatsuko's daughter Tsubaki became a leader after Tatsuko's death. And after Tsubaki, I think she's still alive but getting old, her son Takashi became the leader of Tamamo. 心にも夕べのありぬ富士の花、森澄を。In my heart too, it's evening, wisteria blossoms, Sumiya Mori. His haiku are very tasteful in a quiet way. And I don't write, my haiku is quite different from this style, but he is one of my favorite haiku poets. Even I wrote haiku in English, alluded one of his New Year's Eve haiku. 梅咲いて庭中に青ざめが来ている。金子通った。Plum blossoms, blue sharks all over in the garden. 通った金子。On February 7, 2021 issue of Sect Parklet, Popona Tsukino, Popona was a student of Tota, interpreted this haiku as follows. Plum blossoms are blooming. They are like blue sharks visiting a garden. The air is still crispy in the early spring. There are lights and shadows. By blooming, static blossoms show their dynamic energy as though they were blue sharks. But I'm a strange kind of a reader, so I want to imagine real sharks coming in the garden. And of course, I know, sharks don't fly, but I feel like sharks are coming and floating in the garden. It's very surrealistic image and a dreamy image at the same time, but I do like that kind of interpretation as well. 月光の増番にならぬかという飯島春子。Moonlight, asking if you want to be an elephant keeper. Haruko Ijima. She influenced the next generation of female haiku poets through her haiku and critical essays. Actually, this is one of my lifetime favorite haiku by, considering many haiku by many different haiku poets. But there's a one problem as a translator because original Japanese doesn't have any subject word. So in a way, I translated like the poet asked someone if she or they or he want to be an elephant keeper. But I should have or could have translated as someone asked the poet if she wants to be an elephant keeper. In that case, translation should be Moonlight being asked if I want to be an elephant keeper. I don't know which one is a better or which one is a correct. Maybe I will check with Ayaka later. 金の靴、一つ落ちし、謝肉祭。有馬明人。A golden shoe left behind, Mardi Gras. Akito Arima. As you know, in the beginning of the meeting, we talked a little bit, or we chit-chat a little bit about Dr. Arima, but I was very lucky to have him as my haiku teacher. He did not force his students write like him or just copy his haiku. He let them write freely. And he was a world-known nuclear physicist, and he traveled all over the world. One of his haiku collection only contains haiku written outside Japan. 薄物の中より銀の鍵を出す高橋魚。From her summer kimono, she takes out a silver key, Shugyo Takaha. Takaha started his haiku group called Takahawk in 1978. And actually, Kyoko Tokutomi was a dojin of this Taka haiku group. And when Kyoko passed away, Takaha wrote haiku dedicated to Kyoko and published it in Taka's membership magazine. His haiku style was called intellectual sketching, and he became one of the leaders of his generation. 白うちは夜の奥より怒涛かな White paper fan from deep inside the night, surging waves. Kai Hasegawa. In 1993, at the age of 39, Kai started his own haiku group named Koshi. And Koshi is very difficult word to translate. Literal translation is old ambition, but if I can remember correctly, according to afterwards of Kai's first haiku collection titled Koshi, the same word of his haiku group, Koshi was or is Niigata Prefecture's old name. And haiku contained in this haiku collection titled Koshi was the one Kai composed when he was working as the newspaper reporter in Niigata. Later, he became a professional haiku poet. And unlike here in the United States, many people can support themselves or their families as a haiku poet. Addition to publishing 20 haiku collection of his own, Kai wrote many books on haiku culture and edited anthologies. And actually, he writes about Basho often. And one of the article I found on the internet, it's a series of Basho and his narrow road to the north. Kai explained about karumi, lightness. Basho said, if we are deeply involved in the human world, we experience up and down feelings whenever we have to leave someone or meet someone's death. I think what Basho called karumi, lightness, is not being involved in the human world and jostled by uncertain time, but it is looking down the human world from the universe higher space. There is tranquility ahead of this lightness. Valentine Day, カクテルは傘さして、Mayuzumi Madoka. Valentine's Day, I open my umbrella to have a cocktail. Madoka Mayuzumi. Madoka caught media's attention when she received the Kadokawa Haiku Encouragement Award in 1994. She's a photogenic as a former Miss Kimono in Tokyo. She appeared several TV programs and has been a popular lecturer. And she has hosted a haiku event with kabuki actors, movie, TV actors, actresses, singers, former athletes. And I think she knows how to use media and promote herself very well. 感情の樹海の果てて泉に空月のポポナ Thick woods of my emotions end. Thick woods of my emotions end. The sky in a spring. Popona Tsukino. She had been a star student of Tota Kaneko since 2004. She received Gendai Haiku Kyokai which is Modern Haiku Association, the oldest haiku association in Japan, New Voice Award in 2010, and won a prominent Kadokawa Haiku Award in 2017. And this Kadokawa Haiku Award is like a Booker Prize or Pulitzer Prize, like in English literature. She said, "When I am ready to start writing haiku, I begin a conversation between myself inside of me." She's been living in Manhattan with her husband, who is a professional classic pianist. This is one of her latest haiku sequence after she lost her mother in Nagano, where she came from, where Popuna came from this spring. "地下ぬるく眼球遊ぶ海があり、関越市。Lukewarm underground, there is a lake where eyeballs play. Etsushi Seki." This is one of 100 haiku Etsushi submitted to the 2002 Fukuyoshiba New Voice Contest. They were titled Magdeburg no Yakata, a castle in Magdeburg, and received encouragement award from Shuri Kido. As you can see here, his approach is unique, and his work is sometimes it's like a horror story, or sometimes it is like a science fiction. And this is one of the easiest one to translate, but most of his haiku, or many of his haiku, are impossible to translate into into English. And also, he produced haiku based on taking care of his grandmother, and based on his first person experience during a catastrophic earthquake in 2011. 簡単な蛇の経歴、光に似て、田島健一。Simple career of a snake, it is like a light. Kenichi Tajima. Kenichi started writing haiku at the age of 15. He joined Enkan Fire Ring, led by Kanta Ishihara in 1989. He's a member of Mamenoki P3, a group of poets from different haiku groups, which is very unusual in Japan. And also, he started a quarterly magazine called Organ in 2015. This magazine is published by a group with equal standings. Unlike Haiku Group, this magazine called Dojinshi doesn't have who is a leader, who is a lower member. Everybody has a very the same position. It's like a flat relationship each other. And I found him when I got a copy of his haiku collection called Tadanara Nupo from Ten's editorial office in Tokyo. And this book became instantly one of my favorite. Keiichi's haiku has a right mix of playfulness, strangeness, nonsense, and sometimes, or most of them, like 575 format, at least for me. 引き出しに海を映さぬサングラス、甲の先。In the drawer, sunglasses do not reflect the sea. Saki Kono. Saki is a graduate of Haiku Koshien, which is kind of like a haiku slam / debate by high school students held in Matsuyama each year. After graduating from university, she became an MC of a haiku teaching program broadcasting on NHK. And she teaches haiku at several universities as well. In the July 17, 2020 issue of Sect Booklet, Katsuhiro Horikiri, same Katsuhiro, but not her husband, wrote about this haiku as follows. Her concern is not if she can go or cannot go to the sea. She worries about the sunglasses which don't reflect the sea she saw that day anymore. The sea, the beach, that day became a bittersweet memory of her younger days. This haiku was originally published in Saki's haiku collection titled Chimamire no Hachi, B, completely covered with lights, which is published in 2012. And at the time, Saki was only 28. So this haiku should be written either at the age of 28 or before. So younger days than 28. Well, Katsuhiro, both the poet and the critic, were born in 1983. So the definition of young might be different from mine. And this is the one who wrote critique on Saki's haiku. 大クラゲ、月の光を裏返す、堀切勝弘。Giant jellyfish, it turns the moonlight inside out. 勝弘堀切。This, his haiku collection, including this haiku, won Haijin Kyokai New Voice Award. Haijin Kyokai is a Haiku Poets Association in Japan. And he studied theater theory at university, specializing French theater. In a way, he is an accidental haiku poet. If he would not have been to go to Ginkante, the Milky Way pub owned by the haiku poet Inao Ito, he might have not started writing haiku. But now, his haiku is published in various magazines. He writes essays and interviews on magazines. And even he started his own online haiku site, Sect Parklet, which is featuring a daily haiku critique, interviews, essays, etc., etc. 靴下に大きな穴やバナナ食べ、西村キリン。Big hole in my sock, I eat a banana. キリン西村。Kirin has been received many haiku awards, including a prominent Kadokawa Haiku Award in 2019. And he's definitely one of the rising stars and seems to be on the way to become a professional haiku poet. And some labels his work as bohemian or modern hermit style. And Etsushi Seki wrote about his style. Kirin writes about a peaceful, self-sufficient life with a view which is slightly off point in a good way. And this is a last and the youngest poet. 海や来る、無風を蝶の下歩く、Asato太。Scorching sun, without the wind, a butterfly walks and walks. Ryuta Asato. In 2020, Ryuta's first haiku collection received Haijin Kyokai New Voice Award. When he received the award, he was only 26 years old, maybe the youngest at the time, and the first Okinawan who received the honor. And as you may know, many civilians lost their lives in Okinawa at the end of World War II. And the island was occupied by the United States until 1972. During the occupation, Okinawa's currency was US dollar, not yen. And the people needed a passport to and from Okinawa. Even residents in Okinawa's nationality remained Japanese. And Ryuta, who was born in 1994, of course, he was born way after Okinawa was returned to Japan. But I felt Okinawa's or island's sad history from his work. And I introduced kind of from Kyoshi to Asato, Kyoshi to Ryuta, to show you some samples of modern Japanese haiku poet. And of course, there are many, many more haiku poets I want to share. And so I would like to continue to follow haiku movement in Japan, and wants to share with their work. And I hope this could be or can be kind of an introduction to Ayaka's talk and reading. Thank you. So should I take a couple questions, or how do you think?
Yes, take some questions.
Okay, so maybe I will take one or two questions, and maybe raise hand or something. And is that the question in chat? Oh no, it's a
Michael has his
comment.
hand up.
Oh, Michael.
Yeah,
Michael,
hi.
don't ask a difficult question, please.
Okay. What is the meaning of life? I was going to say one of the times that I met Akito sensei, Arima sensei, he said he was the great grandson of Shiki.
No.
And at the time I thought, really? I didn't know that he meant lineage.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see you talk about that and emphasize how important that is, because I think it's something that we don't quite understand fully in the West, how important that is. I don't think we need to do that in the West, but I think it's worth understanding that about Japanese haiku.
Thank you.
And so I guess my question is, would you agree with that? We don't need to do that in the West?
I don't think so. I mean, because I think, the culture and attitude of the Japanese and Westerns, like Canadians, Americans, whatever, are different. Because I think it's changing. Maybe it's changing a little bit, but Japanese are trained to follow the teacher, whatever the teacher said we should follow, or something like that. So, but we are more like loosely coupled, or kind of things. So of course, we need some kind of a mentor and somebody who can teach, or teach haiku to younger generation or less experienced people. But it's very difficult for difficult to have that kind of a lineage, shike, mentor student, very tight relationship here, I guess. Unless you want to be one of those, American shike. Okay. Okay.
Could I say something?
Okay.
Hey, can you hear me? In the sciences, like with Rick, as a mathematician, they have that kind of lineage exactly. But it's formal, but it's very, very recognized. And from one, the grandfather, like Rick could tell you his lineage, mathematical lineage. It's
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. That, in some study or some university kind of, it happens, I guess. Okay. And Paul Miller.
Yeah, I really like your Blue Willow Haiku World, and I think it'd be good if you shared the link in the chat to everybody else, where you're translating a poem every day. but I always wonder, of the poems that you translate, they seem often very abstract, very playful. And I wonder if that is representative of all the haiku groups in Japan, or is it more representative of your style that you like?
Oh, that's a difficult question. And well, number one, I am not following very, very traditional haiku well. And as you know, I'm not a very fan of a very traditional haiku. So my source of those haiku is from a haiku magazine in Japan, and I picked up them randomly. But maybe unconsciously, I pick up the ones it appealed to me. So not everyone write abstract or playful ones, but more serious ones, more traditional ones, the various. So it's kind of I think reflected my taste a little bit, unfortunately. But still, you can read some of Japanese haiku.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you are the responsible one, who made me start. So so
I'm
maybe
glad
I
to-
will think about, I will pick up more traditional one next month. Okay.
I just think that our perception of Japanese haiku, we only know the translations that we can see. We don't get everything. So I'm not suggesting you do more traditional things. I was just asking the question.
Oh, okay. Okay. But at least, that they're more getting abstract than Basho's age, of course. I can tell that. And there's a more strange ones. If it's almost impossible to translate for me, but it's very interesting in the Japanese if you can read them. But anyway, and Wakako.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful present. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Wonderful presentation. I really learned a lot from you, especially the translated haiku from Blue Willow, but also some of the Japanese haiku books you gave it to me. I really appreciate those, and then I really like your taste. That's why even though I learned haiku when I was in elementary school in Japan, I kind of stopped. I mean, really, I didn't study anything haiku, and I came to the States, and then I was introduced to English haiku, and then I was learning English haiku, and then sort of starting going back to Japanese haiku. And then I realized that your contemporary haiku really, really interesting. And then plus it helps me to read some of old ancient Japanese kanji so that it's easier for me to understand Japanese contemporary haiku more than ever. So I really thankful. And I really want you to translate your kantoku, the one with the sunflower and then the space. I don't know, you translated your own, but I thought that was wonderful. I don't know, you translated your own haiku or not, but I would love to listen to your translated version as well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And also, actually, I'm the exactly same as Wakako. When I started studying haiku at elementary school, I truly hate them. And after I came here, I was more interested in English. When I was exposed to English haiku, I was like, kind of things. And the translating my own, I did a couple. If my Japanese one is published in like magazine, haiku magazine, but which is not many because Japanese haiku magazines are invitation only. You have to be invited to be published in the magazine. So I tend to not to translate my Japanese haiku a lot. Maybe recently it's changing a little bit because my name is getting a little bit more known than before. But when I started it, when I submit haiku in English, everybody says like, "Oh, did you translate from Japanese? And I said, no, I write English haiku in English. I write Japanese haiku in Japanese, but sometimes it's hard for some editors or some people to understand that because your brain would be different. I mean, as a bilingual, maybe you know, but it's quite different. So but anyway, I'm glad that. And so Tanya's his comment. Okay. I think that's it for now. And if you have a question after Ayaka's presentation, maybe we can, take it or something.